Welcome everybody. So check this out. Next week, I'm heading to an event in Toronto with some of the most amazing people out there that I could ever think to be around. And I'm going to be honest with you because there's a lot of people who I know have similar feelings to what I used to feel when I would go to these types of events. Like, these are the exact types of events, the types of rooms and such where imposter syndrome used to hit me the hardest. I'd walk in and I'd feel like I didn't belong there, or that maybe I wasn't even qualified to be at the same table as some of them. But over time, I learned how to work with those feelings instead of against them. And I wanted to share those with you today, like the exact strategies I used to stop letting imposter syndrome run the show for me, so that you can start to do the same. Because the thing is I thought successful people for the longest time, they were just confident. They had some secret formula for always being feeling like they were qualified, always deserving, and always being able to be themselves. But the truth that I eventually learned as a part of all that was, parents, leaders, and entrepreneurs that you look up to, that I look up to, they still have that same voice whispering in their head that what if they figure you out, right? Or what if I don't know what I'm doing? That's what is referred to as that imposter syndrome, and there's a paradox behind it. When the most capable people feel like they're the biggest frauds out there. And today, we're going to talk about why that happens, and more importantly, how you can stop questioning your own qualifications as a part of that. Now, before we dive into that, let me just say, because I forgot to at the beginning, welcome to the GIVER Method channel. My name's Jake. I'm glad you're able to join me. And of course, I like to tee up all my videos with some questions. Have you sat in a meeting before and praying that nobody called on you because if they ask you a direct question, you were convinced they'd find out you were maybe winging it, or just you're figuring it out too? Or have you ever thought to yourself, everyone else seems to be more qualified, and I'm just fooling them somehow. I'm just able to be in the same room as them. Or maybe you had that heavy fear of any moment now someone's just going to discover that I have no idea what it is that I'm doing. If that sounds familiar, or any similar type of thing sounds familiar to you, then hear me with this. Imposter syndrome is a very real thing, and it impacts so many people, especially the more that you're trying to achieve in life. You're not failing, you're not behind, it's not that you're less than in any sort of way, and you're definitely not the only one who feels that way. It happens to so many people. What's actually happening is your abilities, your competence have outgrown what your self-image is. And you're more qualified than you give yourself credit for, but because you're stretching into this new territory, your brain interrupts with this uncertainty, as proof that maybe you shouldn't even be there. And in reality, it's just your growth alarm going off, telling you hey, this doesn't feel right. It feels out of the ordinary. But yeah, that's because you're stepping into something new. And if you think about it, maybe you're a parent who's been navigating years of raising children, but you still feel other moms and dads have this special secret, or this manual that you missed out on. Or maybe you're the entrepreneur who built something meaningful, and every time that you set a price or introduce yourself as an expert, you're sure your clients are going to figure out that you're just making this all up as you go. Guess what? They all are. They really are. Or maybe you're an employee with years of results, under your belt, right? But you still sit in meetings thinking man, these are real professionals. I'm not. I'm just the outsider in the room, And so there's nothing wrong with you. That's not humility. It's not accurate self-awareness. It's that paradox at work behind imposter syndrome. So we're going to dive deep into that today. Now, what we're going to cover today is definitely grounded inside of my book called The GIVER Method. I'm Jake Talbert, founder, author of The GIVER Method. This came out back in November. I'm going to put a link in the description where you can go get access to it. Right now, you can get it for as low as $2. I highly recommend you get yourself a copy. So there'll be a link in below. Get it on Amazon, or just pause the video, open your Amazon app, and go find The GIVER Method by Jake Talbert. Like I said, you can get it for as little as $2. And it has become an Amazon bestseller, has tons of 5-star reviews. And the reason why is that, and people love it, is because it's grounded in my story with real exercises and action items that you can go do. My story is very similar to yours. I've walked a very similar path. I'm a father of 3. I'm an entrepreneur. I've worked in that corporate maze and sea of cubicles. And so when I tell the stories, they're stories that are grounded in places that you probably can connect with. And I designed the exercise action items so that you don't have to burn everything down. You don't have to go move to the woods and to find yourself. Everything's designed to fit into the world that you already live inside of right now. Okay, so that's going to be the great part. So go get yourself a copy of it. Like I said, it's the best $2 that you could invest in yourself. I know for a fact, with imposter syndrome, I've experienced it before. I'll never forget, first time I was actually invited to one of these events, the one I'm going to next week in Toronto. And I spent weeks like thinking about how I was going to show up and preparing for it and buying specific outfits, all sorts of things. Like I wanted, you know, I didn't want people to see through the act, you know, of who I was presenting myself to be. Like, and so like, but it got to the point that like the night before the event, I almost didn't go. Like I almost canceled the whole thing, you know, because I felt like I was a fraud and I was like, I wasn't fit to be in that room with those people. But when I showed up, and one of the first things that happened was the person running the event, he asked everyone in the room, is anyone here has experienced imposter syndrome before? Raise your hand. And everyone put their hands up. I was like, whoa, okay. And they said, and if anyone's having it right now, put your hand up. And everyone's hands stayed up. And it blew my mind, you know, just to think about like, man, some of these people that, some that I even look up to and hope to be like someday, you know, we're also feeling those same imposter feelings, you know, and it's not evidence that we're unqualified. Like everyone's experienced this in some sort of way. And even some of the most qualified people I know, you know, imposter syndrome is just evidence that, you know, you care really deeply about how you show up. And so you can, you know, really make the impact and deliver value that you want to deliver. And it hits the hardest when you're stepping into that new version of yourself. So here's what the research shows out there. Like I said, I love grounding all the stuff that I present in science and research. The data out there says that 70% of people feel imposter syndrome at some point. And it hits the hardest for the people taking on more responsibility. The parents stepping into a new season, entrepreneurs stretching themselves in their business, employees stepping into leadership. Like the more you grow, the louder that imposter like alarm is going to sound. You know, and that's the real paradox. Feeling like a fraud doesn't mean that you're falling short. It usually just means like you're growing faster than that self-concept can keep up with. And so we want to tackle that and dive through 6 strategies that I personally have used, but I've also coached so many people through as well. So that, you know, different parents, entrepreneurs, employees like yourself have used to like step into their actual expertise without any sort of like false humility. So just so we're clear, it's not about like the puffing yourself up, pretending that you know everything. It's not about any sort of woo-woo tactics. Like it's realizing your self-doubt is often like the tax that you pay in growth. And learning how to turn that doubt into evidence is exactly where you're supposed to be. I said it's all grounded in the GIVER method because like once you get past that, it helps you to really step into who it is that you're meant to be. And so if you want to grab yourself a copy, like I said, go down, grab the link in the description, go to Amazon, get yourself a copy. You can also go to thegivermethod.com, learn more about the ways that we help people, maybe get access to some of our free resources or join our newsletter. Go find us on all social media channels under the handle of the GIVER method. And then of course, like some people either want one-on-one coaching or they want some help going through these types of things. Like if the stuff that we cover on the channel resonates with you and you want to talk about what that would look like to work together one-on-one, then check out the link below that talks about coaching. And then of course, if you have a team or a podcast, an event, a stage, whatever it may look like, you know, a place where people gather that you feel like this sort of a message would resonate with them and be valuable to them, then check out the link about speaking and podcasting. I'd love to talk about what that could look like for you. And of course, please hit subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. Don't want you to miss out on any of the content we put out about, you know, the GIVER method or about helping people to discover their gifts and superpowers, create value and influence and impact in their lives, live a more fulfilled life with better relationships, you know, more delight and joy in their lives. So like the video, comment your thoughts along the way, of course. All right, let's dive in. Let's stop wasting time and go through these 6 different strategies that there are that are going to really help you unpack these things. So the first one we really want to talk about is like how to stop forgetting you're actually qualified. All right, so this is about building a proof file, like a proof of what you've done. So if we're honest, one of the biggest reasons you feel like a fraud isn't because you're actually unqualified. It's because you've just got terrible memory of what your wins are. And here's what's really going on. Like that's how our brains are wired, okay? It's this thing that you know, the scientists call this negativity bias, you know, which really is like you can replay every awkward moment, every mistake, every stumble, like on loop constantly in your brain. Like that's just how we are. But when it comes to the dozens of times that you figured something out, you solved that problem, you crushed it, you created value for people, your brain treats it like it never happened. It looked past it because it's looking for the threats, not the wins, not the good, you know? So you might have thousands of, you know, years ago, like, it's this wiring from thousands of years ago that we have in us. Like which berries are going to kill you and which ones, you know, you can't eat, or watching for the survival and everything. Like today, it's just, all it's doing for you today is wrecking confidence. And so this is why this proof file comes in so handy. Think of it as like there's like an external hard drive of your self-trust, your personal highlight reel that like helps you argue with that inner fraud voice when it starts to pipe up. So let's talk about like How can you do that? How do you build the proof file? What's in there? So the first step to that is just pick a format. Pick a format that works for you. Maybe it's a note on your phone, a Google Doc, maybe it's journaled by your bed, whatever. Pick whatever format you're going to document this stuff in. That's number one. Number two, capture one like competence moment a day. Not like I had a good day at work. Like, be very specific. A couple of examples could be like, I helped my colleagues finally understand a new software by breaking it into 3 steps. Or I stayed calm during my teenager's meltdown and I helped them process instead of escalating. Or I closed that client deal by listening first instead of jumping straight to the pitch. Whatever it is, write them down. Just keep writing them down. Don't judge them. Just write them down. And then look for patterns. Every time that you notice people come to you for advice, or you solve something others would avoid, or you stay steady when everyone else tends to lose it, like those go into the file too. At first, it might feel small. It might feel like you're not doing a lot, but over time, you're building this bank of undeniable proof that you know what you're doing, you bring value, and you are completely capable of what it is that you're trying to do. Imposter syndrome thrives on the absence of evidence, right? When you've got all this data that is technically in your memory, but your brain is cherry picking the failures, to convince you that you're a fraud. But when you've got this file of receipts that you can actually literally pull up and go through, like, man, that voice, like, it can't argue against the proof. And the next time that you are about to step into that meeting or sign the client or handle that family challenge, like, that voice starts to step in like, hey, who do you think you are with this? It's like, I know exactly who I am. I've got all this proof. I've got this thing. Once again, it's not about an ego. It's about the evidence. The evidence beats imposter syndrome every single time. Trust me, it works. Which takes us to the second strategy, which is how you turn doubt into the proof that you're growing. How do we flip that fraud alarm, that imposter syndrome when it rings to you? Because no one tells you this. Those knots in your stomach and that voice saying like, who do you think you are? Once again, they're not proof that you don't belong. They're just that growth alarm. And most people think imposter syndrome shows up because they're not good enough. But the research is clear. Imposter feelings usually spike when you are growing, not when you're failing. So if you think about it, like when you're doing something that you're already mastered, like you feel calm and confident and predictable, you know how the game works. But the second you step into a new space, becoming a parent for the first time, maybe leading a team, starting a business, raising your prices, speaking to bigger audiences, like, of course, you're going to feel uncertain. You're in this like uncharted waters and territory. That uncertainty isn't a verdict. It's just like, it's a signal. It's your brain saying like, hey, this is new. Like, it does matter to you, so pay attention. So here's how you start to like take it and reframe it as fuel. The next time that imposter feelings show up, that like I'm in over my head feeling or whatever it looks like for you, pause and ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1 is like, am I doing something new or challenging? Pretty easy. Number 2 is like, does this feeling always show up when I'm stretching myself? And number 3 is like, what if the discomfort I'm feeling is actually evidence I'm growing? And just starting to pick through those, it disrupts the brain patterns that are going into the imposter syndrome. And 9 times out of 10, you actually realize that the doubt spikes that you're having in those exact moments, like, they show that you're expanding. You're about to speak up in a meeting. You finally charge what you're worth at work. You sit down and have that hard parenting conversation you've been avoiding. Like, the truth is, like, uncertainty is baked into growth. Feeling like you're guessing doesn't mean there's something wrong or unqualified. It just means that you're evolving and changing and you just haven't figured it all out yet, which is perfectly fine. Because the second you stop confusing growth signals with like inadequacy signals, everything's going to change for you. Like, instead of running on this discomfort, you actually lean into it for fuel. Like, it's showing you like, hey, I may not feel ready, but I'm in the middle of a stretch and I'm getting there. And then that voice, when it shows up, like, don't shut it down. Just nod and be like, hey, thanks for the reminder that I'm on the path that I'm growing and I'm doing something hard. I'm doing something new. Like, thank it for the information that it's giving you. Which is going to take us into the third one, okay? The third strategy or idea, which is like this, how do you see yourself the way that others see you? Like, the way that others always see you. Because that's difficult to do. It's this external perspective, how can I borrow their eyes and see that? Because it's truthfully one of the cruelest tricks that imposter syndrome is ever going to play on you, when it convinces you, like, through that harsh inner voice that, like, that's more accurate than what other people are seeing in you. And so what happens is you brush off compliments, and feedback that people are giving you, like, oh, like they're just being nice. You downplay the positive feedback, like, hey, they don't really know me. They don't know how easy that was for me, and they chalk the win up to luck, but they will take full ownership of those mistakes that keep popping up. I mean, if that sounds familiar, like, trust me, I've been there myself. I get it. That's why I know I can say these things, because it resonates true with me and with so many other individuals. The problem isn't that people don't see your competence. The problem is that you don't trust their perspective. And that's where this strategy comes in, where you borrow their eyes, because sometimes you need to borrow someone else's vision so you can see yourself clearly. And so here's how you do it. You can go pick 5 people that you know really well. Could be coworkers, clients, friends, family members, whoever, that see you in action day to day, see you in action often. And then ask them a simple question. Hey, when have you seen me solve a problem in a way that stood out to you? What's something that I'm good at that I might not realize? The magic isn't hearing the generic praises like, oh, you're great, or oh, you're smart. Like, no, you're not just looking for adjectives. You're looking for stories. The time that you calmed the heated situation, the insight you shared that completely shifted someone's perspective, the way you handled the mess that others thought was maybe impossible. And then do this. It's a crazy thought. Write it down exactly as they said it. Like, don't try to polish it. Don't judge it. Don't dismiss. Like, save them in this, like, in your proof files, right? The things that we talked about earlier, because then you have more data to come back to. Imposter syndrome, it's like a fun house of mirrors. It magnifies your flaws and it blinds you to impact. It doesn't show you where you should be going. But when you start collecting these external snapshots, you get a clear reflection of who you are. You begin seeing these patterns, like the abilities that multiple people mention, like, and the value that you clearly bring, even if you don't realize it. And the kicker here is, like, you don't have to feel confident in that moment. You just have to trust that their words, like, trust in their words long enough to let them start balancing the scale against your inner critic. So the next time that fraud voice starts to come up and whisper to you, you can open up the file and read these stories and remind yourself, like, hey, if they can see it, maybe it's time I start believing it too. Which is going to take us to the 4th area, which is all about how to tell the difference between excellence and impossible. This is all about this perfection trap that people fall into. Entrepreneurs are some of the worst at this, so sorry, entrepreneurs. Because one of the sneaky ways, and truthfully, the sneakiest roots to imposter syndrome is perfectionism dressed up as professionalism. Let me say that again, especially to you entrepreneurs. Imposter syndrome is perfectionism dressed up like professionalism. You tell yourself, I want to do good work, I want to put out a quality product, but what you're really doing is setting standards that no human could ever hit. You convince yourself that you need to know everything before you can be confident in anything. You act like one mistake cancels the 10 wins that you are going to do. You treat every gap in any sort of knowledge as proof that you don't belong, instead of what it actually is, proof that you're human and you're still learning like the rest of us. Weird concept, right? So that's why it's called this, there's this perfection trap, check-in that you need to do. It's all about seeing, how do we separate the healthy standards from impossible ones? And the truth is, healthy standards are going to push you to grow. Impossible standards guarantee that you will always feel behind. And so how do you make that distinction? Well, glad you asked. Here's what you do. Before you start a project, write down 3 benchmarks. What's the good enough to ship? What's the excellent version? And what's perfection? And then, let's say you're preparing a presentation. Good enough might be clear content with a smooth delivery. Excellent might be adding stories and interactive elements that keep people engaged. Perfect? That's the fantasy version. That's flawless delivery, groundbreaking insights that everyone leaves changed forever. Spoiler alert, perfect doesn't exist. You may think it does. You may have seen ones that you're really impressed by, but trust me, they probably had all sorts of things there that they thought to themselves, dang it, that didn't go the way I wanted it to. And so you need to reframe it. Aim for excellent and accept good enough. Stop chasing the perfect version, because perfect isn't real. It's the enemy of your progress. And then now that, what do you do when you catch yourself slipping back into that perfection mode? Well, once again, I'm glad you asked. You have to have a drill that you go into. Staying up until 2 a.m. polishing slides that are already good enough, that are already fine, or putting off, applying for that opportunity because you don't feel 100% ready. Those are the moments where you get to stop and pause and ask yourself, like, okay, am I pursuing excellence, or am I chasing an impossible standard? What would good enough look like right here? What's the smallest version of this that I could do and still create value for somebody else? That's, like, in many cases, the reset you need. It doesn't matter, like, like how much you want to make it perfect. Like, perfectionism doesn't make you better. It keeps you stuck in prep mode instead of action mode. And once again, talk about these paradoxes. Like, gosh, here's a big one. To think about. You don't build confidence by preparing to do a thing. You build it by doing the damn thing. It's that simple. When you give yourself permission to ship at 80%, you improve as you go. Like, things are going to happen. You learn faster. You create more impact, and you build the kind of, like, proof that, like, confidence, that confidence you need to move past the perfectionism. Like, perfectionism will never give you that sort of confidence. I always say to the businesses I work with, think about it this way: version 1 always outperforms version none, and there's no reason why you can't go from version 1 to version 2 very quickly. But let's get version 1 out the door, because the bottom line is, like, your family, your clients, coworkers, friends, people around you, they don't need you to be perfect. I had a whole video about that yesterday. Like, they need you to show up with what you have to offer today. That's what's going to create growth. That's what creates trust. Now that takes us to the 5th area. All right, so stop asking, am I enough? Start asking, how can I help? It's the idea of, how do we flip the script on the imposter syndrome to service? And that changes imposter syndrome forever. Like, you flip the spotlight off of the imposter, like, I'm not good enough, or maybe they'll figure me out, or whatever. Imposter syndrome is sneaky because it keeps you focused, like, everything on you. Your gaps, your flaws, your imaginary, like, what if I blow it all scenarios, like, that could happen. It's like having a magnifying glass, like, that's glued to all your insecurities. No wonder they start to feel really heavy. But the service shift breaks that cycle. Instead of obsessing over, like, am I qualified enough? Like, you shift to the question of, like, well, how can I help with what I already have? If you think about it, like, most of the time, people aren't looking for a perfect genius. They're looking for someone who can, like, make progress, ask the right questions, and, like, share real experiences just to help them take the next step. One of my favorite quotes about this that I read about was from this speaking coach named Majid, and essentially talked about the idea that, like, being an expert doesn't mean that you're the top of your field or the top of whatever area you're in. Being an expert means that you know more than I do, and I'm willing to come to you to get value from you, for you to teach me the things that you know. You are an expert to me. Like, such an amazing thing, because, like, they want someone who can share real experiences, who can help them to take that next step. And so here's what that looks like in real life. At work, instead of, like, hey, I hope I sound smart in a meeting, like, try, like, hey, what insight could I share that might, move this conversation forward? If you're an entrepreneur, instead of, like, what if they think I'm charging too much? Like, what's the value I'm actually, like, creating? And what investment does that justify? As a parent, like, instead of thinking, like, am I a good parent, or am I a good enough parent? Think about, like, ask yourself, like, what does my child need from you now? How can I show up with more love, or more wisdom, or more calm, like, with what I already have? And then notice the shift. Suddenly, it's not about, like, proving yourself. It's about serving others with what you already have, like, the things you have in your hands. Like, that's so much more powerful. Service is infinite. Perfection is impossible. You're never going to know everything, but you always have something to give. And when you focus on contribution instead of the evaluation of it, the imposter voice is going to disappear completely. So stop trying to be the most perfect or the smartest person in the room. Start being the most useful person in the room. That's where the magic will happen. And that takes us to the 6th and final one. So it's like, how do you build the identity you want, one action at a time? So the proof over feelings. Most people think confidence works like this. Like, hey, once I feel ready, like, then I'll go take action. Once I feel confident, I'm going to go do this thing. Right? Like, that's what happens. But then you hesitate. You keep telling yourself, like, okay, well, when I feel confident, then I'll do it. Then I'll speak up at that time. I'll raise my prices. I'll try that new approach with my kids. But confidence never shows up. The truth is, like, you don't wait your way into confidence. That's not how it works. You act your way into it. You don't become a leader by waiting until you feel like one. You become a leader by leading when you're not sure if you're ready. you don't become someone who shares their expertise by waiting until like every credential you have is the right one in the world. You become the person that actually just sharing, like while your voice shakes and you're figuring things out. And so that's why this like evidence-based identity building is going to be so important. Every time that you take action in the middle of that uncertainty, like you're creating that casting vote or that receipt for the person that you want to become. It's not about faking it. It's about proving to yourself one action at a time that you are becoming that person. And so it's a really simple way to start. You start by just like creating like your identity, the evidence of your identity list. Nothing fancy. Once again, just a note on your phone or a journal page, like even a sticky note on the fridge. Like every day, write down the moment that you acted like the version of yourself that you're trying to grow into. Even if you didn't feel confident, even if you failed at it, just write it down. You spoke up in that meeting. You shared the idea with your spouse about this parenting idea. You raised your prices, as an entrepreneur, even though it felt like someone might laugh at you. You asked the one tough question at work, even though you weren't sure how it would land. Those moments are gold. They're the best damn proof out there, and proof beats feelings every single time. Over time, these lists, it rewires how you actually see yourself, and you go from feeling like I'm someone who struggles with imposter syndrome to I'm someone who takes action from it. Like someone takes action even if I have it. Like it doesn't matter. Anyways, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go take action. It goes from like I'm not qualified for this to I'm someone who learns by doing and growing through the challenges that come. And now here's the real pro tip. The language you use to describe yourself matters so much more than you think. So stop defining yourself by your doubts and start describing yourself by your actions and the future version you're becoming. I'm a parent who experiments and adapts. I'm the entrepreneur who creates value. I'm the employee who speaks up when it counts. Because identity doesn't change through pep talks. It changes through the evidence that you create for yourself. And when you have proof, you keep showing up. And when it's uncomfortable, your brain starts to believe that. You stop waiting to feel more confident. You just start living as the person you've been trying to be all along and enjoying the happiness that comes with that. And so here's what I want you to walk away with from today. Those imposter feelings that maybe you've wrestled with, they're not proof that anything's wrong, you're unqualified or anything like that. They're just proof that you're stretching and growing and stepping into bigger territory than you've ever been a part of. And the truth is, the most capable people out there, they all feel like they're frauds at some point. Not because they're faking it, but because they care enough to keep pushing themselves into the new roles, new responsibilities, and new challenges that are coming at them. They're trying to step into the new thing and the bigger thing than where they were yesterday. The knot that happens in your stomach is not any sort of sign of inadequacy. It's actually like expansion trying to break out and just keep you moving forward. And so these things we talked about, these strategies, they matter so much. They're not just hacks, or anything like that. They're just a new way of seeing yourself, to start collecting the proof that you're already doing it, you're getting there, and that you can keep taking action, that you are truly enough. You focus on how you can help things to change dramatically for you. So stop apologizing for being good at something, right? You're good at what you do. Stop being afraid of that. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop acting like the person, like you're thinking like, oh, I'll be that person someday. Start just being that person. Act like them today. Stop chasing the impossible standards and start living with the kind of real evidence, like the evidence-based self-trust that no one can take away from you and that imposter syndrome can't break down. That's what the GIVER method, like my book, is all about. Helping you see your gifts, that were never meant to be hidden or delayed or second guessed. They're there. They're meant to be given away. And that the moment you stop questioning those sort of things, like if I'm qualified enough, is the moment you can finally start creating impact that you were built for. And so if that hits home for you today, then go down to the description, get yourself a copy of the GIVER method on Amazon. Like I said, it's got a great price right now, as low as $2. If you're trying to figure this out, if you're like, hey, I've been trying to figure this out on my own, I'm just getting sick of it, I'm getting tired. I'd love some hands-on support. Well, then we've opened up a few of our one-on-one coaching positions. You can go check out that link below as well, learn about more details. If you lead a team, run a podcast, an event, anything like that where this message could serve your people, then I'd love to connect on that. You can find the link about speaking and podcasting below. Of course, don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell for notifications, like the video, and comment. I read every single one of them, and I love to hear how people take these strategies and which one they put into play first. The bottom line is your competence is real. You know, your gifts matter. Your family, your work, your world, they don't need you to be perfect. They need you to show up as you. So stop waiting to feel qualified. Start using what you already have. That's where everything's going to shift for you. And so I'll just leave you with that today. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day. Hopefully we'll see you in one of our future videos. So have a good one. We'll see you real soon.